What if Hagrid delivered baby Harry to the Weasleys instead of the Dursleys? It's a cold, dark night on Privet Drive. A giant of a man, his face streaked with tears and his beard a tangled mess, gently lifts a baby wrapped in blankets from the sidecar of a flying motorcycle. In his hands, he's holding not just an infant, but the entire fate of the wizarding world. And in his pocket, a letter from the greatest wizard of the age, Albus Dumbledore. This is the moment we all know. Hagrid delivers baby Harry to the doorstep of his cruel, magic-hating aunt and uncle. But what if in that moment something snapped? What if Hagrid's raw grief and his gut feeling about the Dursleys overruled Dumbledore's carefully laid plans? What if he took a little detour to a home he knew was chaotic, a bit rundown, but bursting with love? What if Hagrid delivered Harry to the Weasleys? This one act of defiance would give Harry the family he'd always dreamed of, but it would come at a terrible cost. It would shatter his mother's most powerful protection, leaving him dangerously exposed to the very evil that made him an orphan. Picture Hagrid standing in the dead quiet of Little Whinging. He looks at number 4, a house so painfully normal it feels all wrong. He thinks of Lily and James, of their courage, their laughter. And then he thinks of the people inside this sterile box, people he'd only heard about with disdain. Dumbledore's letters heavy in his pocket, the instructions crystal clear. But Hagrid's heart is heavier. He just can't do it. He can't leave James and Lily's boy with a them. In a split-second decision that would rewrite history, Hagrid climbs back onto Sirius's motorcycle. The engine rumbles back to life, not with a roar of departure, but one of pure defiance. He soars into the night sky, leaving Privet Drive and its cookie-cutter houses behind forever. He sets a new course. For Ottery Saint, Catchpole, and for a crooked, tumble-down house he knows is filled with more warmth than any mansion. His arrival at the Burrow would be a shock, to say the least. Arthur and Molly Weasley, already wrangling a small army of redheads, and, with another on the way, would be speechless. But once they saw the lightning bolt scar and heard Hagrid's choked explanation, that shock would instantly melt into sorrow and then into a fierce, protective love. Molly, her heart aching for her lost friends, would take the baby into her arms. And in that moment, Harry Potter becomes theirs. There's no debate, no second thought. What's one more mouth to feed when a child is in need? He is, for the first time, home. For this version of Harry, the cupboard under the stairs simply doesn't exist. His world isn't gray and silent. It's a whirlwind of brilliant color and loving chaos. He'd grow up as the unofficial 8th Weasley, his messy black hair a stark contrast in a sea of red. He wouldn't be kept in the dark about his past. He'd be raised celebrating his parents' heroism, hearing stories about Lily's kindness and James's bravery from people who truly knew and loved them. His childhood would be magical in every single way. He'd watch Mrs. Weasley's knitting needles working on their own, help Mr. Weasley de-gnome the garden, and absolutely get into all sorts of magical trouble with Ron, Fred, and George. His first time on a broomstick wouldn't be a terrifying lesson at school, but a wobbly, joyful flight on a toy broom. Chasing Ron around the orchard, he'd learn about Quidditch, the Ministry, and even Voldemort, not from books, but from the everyday life of the family surrounding him. So, the insecure, questioning boy we know from the books, he'd be gone. In his place would be a confident, emotionally secure young man. He wouldn't have that deep, painful hunger for a family because he's never known a day without one. His bond with Ron wouldn't be a newfound friendship, but a true brotherhood, forged in years of shared rooms, arguments, and adventures. His relationship with Ginny would be one of easy, sibling-like friendship, a very different foundation for the romance that would eventually bloom. Of course, they couldn't hide his fame. He'd still be the boy who lived. But the Weasleys' natural humility and strong moral compass would be the perfect antidote to arrogance. They'd teach him that his fame was born from a terrible tragedy and his parents' love, not from anything he did himself, grounding him in a way the Dursleys' neglect never could. The moment Dumbledore discovered Hagrid's act of defiance, his blood would have run cold. His entire meticulously crafted plan for Harry's safety was in ruins. The whole point of choosing the Dursleys, the only reason, was a magic deeper and older than any ward he could cast. Lily's blood protection. That ancient magic sparked by her sacrifice could only be sealed and maintained if Harry lived with his mother's blood relative, Petunia. As long as Harry could call the place where his mother's blood lived home, Voldemort couldn't touch him there. By taking Harry to the Burrow, Hagrid, with the best intentions in the world, had broken that sacred shield. The Weasleys, for all their love, shared no blood with Lily Potter. Dumbledore would, of course, throw every powerful enchantment he knew around the Burrow. But those are like alarms and locks on a door. They can be broken. They're nothing compared to the absolute invisible fortress of the Blood Ward. Harry's now vulnerable. Any Death Eater still loyal to Voldemort, any dark creature drawn to his legend, could now potentially find him. The happiest home in Britain has just become the biggest target. Harry's arrival at Hogwarts would be a totally different scene. He wouldn't be the amazed, overwhelmed boy discovering magic for the first time. He'd be a kid coming to a place he's heard stories about his entire life. He'd walk into that great hall not with wide-eyed wonder, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly where he belongs. The Sorting Hat would probably just graze his hair before shouting, "Gryffindor!" The Weasley influence is just that strong. His friendship with Ron is already a given. They're brothers. His dynamic with Hermione, though, would change. He wouldn't need her to explain what a Gringotts vault is or how the houses work. Their friendship would likely still form, built on saving each other's necks, but his initial dependency on her would be gone. This changes the game. In the first showdown with Professor Quirrell, the core magic of Lily's sacrifice, the part that lives in Harry's blood and skin, would still work. Quirrell would still burn at his touch, but the larger threat has shifted. Dumbledore would know this was just the first of many attempts, and that Harry's home was no longer a safe haven. The stakes are instantly higher. Come second year, the Chamber of Secrets becomes even more terrifying. This isn't just his best friend's little sister who's been taken. This is his sister. His desperation to save Ginny would be profoundly personal, almost frantic. When he emerges from the chamber victorious, the Weasleys' love for him would be cemented into something legendary. He wouldn't just be the boy they took in, he'd be the hero who saved one of their own. Then in third year, the revelation about Sirius Black would be processed completely differently. It would be a family crisis. The Weasleys knew the Potters were friends with Sirius. Learning the truth would be a collective shock, and the drive to help an innocent man would be a shared family mission. Before we get to the devastating climax of this new timeline, what do you think would be the biggest change in Harry's personality? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Voldemort finally returns. The Goblet of Fire is where this alternate reality turns into a complete nightmare. Voldemort's plan works, Harry is captured, and in that graveyard, his blood is used to resurrect the Dark Lord. In our timeline, Dumbledore later explains, this act accidentally strengthened Lily's protection, tethering Harry to life. But the immediate, terrifying consequence is the same. Voldemort can now touch Harry. And worse, the place Harry has to return to for the summer is no longer an impenetrable fortress. Voldemort is back, and Harry's primary shield is gone. The war against Voldemort becomes a desperate, frantic defense. The Burrow, once a symbol of chaotic joy, is now the front line. The Order of the Phoenix would have no choice but to place it under the Fidelius charm, turning the Weasleys' beloved home into a beautiful prison, trapping them all for their own safety. The pressure on this family would be crushing. They are now the sole guardians of the wizarding world's greatest hope and Voldemort's #1 target. The attacks that were scattered throughout the later books would likely become a sustained siege. Voldemort, no longer needing to bypass that tricky blood ward, could focus all his power on this one vulnerable location. This new timeline leads to a faster, bloodier war. Voldemort's objective is brutally simple: destroy the Burrow, kill Harry Potter. The Horcrux hunt becomes a frantic race against time, undertaken by a Harry who isn't just fighting for an abstract good, but for the lives of the only family he has ever known. His entire motivation is flipped. He isn't the boy who survived a loveless childhood to finally find where he belongs. He's the boy who was given everything and now has to watch it all come under fire. His fight isn't a search for family, but a desperate defense of it. Every duel, every decision is weighed against the potential loss of Molly, Arthur, Ron, Ginny, the very people who gave him a life worth living. The final victory would still likely hinge on Dumbledore's master plan, Snape's true loyalty, the mastery of the Elder Wand, and Harry's choice to sacrifice himself. But the road to that victory would be paved with different sorrows. The Weasley family, already devastated in the original timeline, would be at the absolute heart of the storm. The potential for loss is so much greater. Hagrid's single act of loving defiance would have created a happy, confident, and well-adjusted Harry Potter. It would have saved him from a decade of horrific abuse and neglect. But that emotional salvation would have cost him his physical one. He would have traded a miserable childhood for a life of constant, terrifying danger, not just for himself, but for the family that so bravely took him in. It leaves us with a painful question. Would a Harry raised by the Weasleys have been a happier boy? Absolutely. But would he have been a safer one? Not a chance. The love of the Weasley family was its own powerful magic, but it could never replace the unique, one-of-a-kind protection Lily Potter left behind in her blood. So what do you think? Was the trade-off worth it? Is a happy childhood worth giving up the one magical ace you have up your sleeve? Let me know your theories down below. And if you enjoyed this What If, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss another theory.